You posted something about going on tour last week, and I was like, "Is he going on tour? What's happening?"
Yeah, so I can tell you the story. So years ago, I mean, this was before I was like in product marketing and was even working as a TV producer. I used to work kind of in like the alternative music scene. So specifically with a nonprofit called Heart Support, and kind of through that, I got to like the main part of that job was interviewing bands and being able to like hear their story. So the nonprofit helps kids that are in that alternative music scene that are kind of struggling with like drug abuse or alcohol abuse or anything in between. And a lot of times it was just trying to hear the story from the artists and sort of hear their background, because a lot of them had come from like pretty rough backgrounds and sort of made it to where they were today. So anyway, all that to say is I got a chance to kind of work with some different bands through that. I don't know if you're into the metal scene at all, but there's a band called August Burns Red that I worked with, and they needed a video editor for some stuff. So they reached out and they were like, "Hey, could you edit this thing?" And so I just did a couple of jobs for them. But then like this last week, I got a message from their guitarist and he was like, "Hey, do you still do like audio engineering? Like, do you want to go on tour with us?" And I was like, "Oh, I think pretty sure you're like texting the wrong guy." So I was like, I mean, I would love to go. It sounds like fun. Like that would be an awesome thing to go do. But unless you need a photographer or something, like I think it's not me. And then the guy kind of replied back and was like, uh, "Oh yeah, definitely texted the wrong guy." But he was like, "Learn audio engineering, come on tour, homie." And I was like, but I did kind of float it to my wife to be like, "Is that something I can do?" And she was like, "Do it." And I was like, "Okay." So I
Hey,
kind of like soft pitched it. That's definitely not going to happen. But yeah, really good guys that I got to work with forever ago. But yeah, it was kind of a fun, just like this full circle moment of like all the lives that I've lived up to this point. So
on this episode of Creative Tangent, we're joined by Lance Spence, a product marketing leader whose path into PMM runs through journalism, television production, and creative work. That mix of backgrounds gives him a unique perspective on how stories get shaped inside a business and how different teams help carry them into market. We talk about translating that complexity, working closely with sales and creative teams, and why the best product marketing often starts with stronger relationships inside the company. Lance, let's start with a tangent. What's something you keep coming back to lately? Maybe in product marketing or maybe outside of it?
I mean, I've got plenty in the PMM world. The big thing I'm kind of back on is there's a movie that I watch every year, and I feel like I just watched it like a week ago, and so I've been trying to get back to like, if you haven't seen this movie, you need to see it. So that's kind of like I think my main thing I've been kind of trying to tell people just whenever I can. It's a movie called About Time. It's a pretty like, you don't need to think about it too hard when you watch the movie because it can kind of fall apart. But the main premise of the movie is that this kid or this adult guy, he has the ability to be able to like go back in time and like relive things that he has experienced personally. And his dad has that ability, and so it's very much not about like time travel and more about seizing the moment, being in the moment. And so there's a lot of like really cool lessons along the way. My favorite part in the movie is he gets married and the wedding is like absolutely horrible. Like it's just like it's pouring down rain, like they have all these things that go wrong. And then he kind of asks his wife like at the end of the day, he's like, "Man, like would you want like a less wet day?" Because basically with his time travel ability, he could change the day if he wanted to. And then she's like, "No, like not for the world. Like lots and lots of types of days," is like a phrase that she uses. Like it means there's good days, there's bad days, but there's always kind of like joy in the margins. And so that's been kind of something I've like rewatching that. It's always like a really good lesson, I think, for any time in somebody's life to sort of like find the joy in the margins of the things that you're, kind of experiencing. And so yeah, if you haven't seen it, that's my like thing that I feel like anytime I can ever bring it up to people recently, I'm like, "Have you seen that movie?" Because I don't think it gets its flowers like it should.
Yeah, I will. I don't know it. I'll have to check it out. It's
Yeah, it's
much
great.
deeper than the movie that I watch over and over again, which is Die Hard. And
Oh yeah.
I don't know if it's a sort of popular, unpopular belief that it's a Christmas movie, but I
Yeah.
watch it at Christmas.
That's
Not a
incredible.
deep lesson in it like yours.
Yeah, I think that's just one of those. It's like if I'm ever watching it, my wife kind of walks by. She's like, You okay? Like, why are you watching
No.
that? So I always feel like, oh, I'm like very like deep for like the next like 2 or 3 days after I've watched it. So,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Nice.
it's an incredible movie. But it's if you start trying to break down the like, oh well, he could he have stopped this major, world event, with his time travel? It's like, don't think about that. It's not about that. It's not about that part of the movie. So
Once it's about time travel, you have to suspend your belief either way.
yes,
So
yeah,
that's
totally,
good. But
yeah, yeah.
yeah, speaking of time travel though, actually, I was thinking your origin story is actually pretty relevant to like where you are now. So
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could time travel with us kind of back to that moment in time when you kind of got started. I don't want to give it away, so I'll let you take it from here a bit.
Yes, I mean, I think if you look at my career path versus a lot of other people in the space, like it's definitely unique. I started my career. I mean, like I said, the first part was I worked in alternative music. Just kind of a video editor and videographer, just kind of telling stories and trying to make content. Then from there, I got my degree in journalism and worked as a television producer for two separate news stations for about 4 years. And in those jobs, I produced a 1 hour television show every weekday. So it was just, really having to be on the ball, and you're kind of the captain of the ship, kind of as a TV producer. So you are like, writing the scripts, you're working with the people that are in the studio, your directors, your creative people, the talent that's in front of camera, even people that are like out in the field, all of those things kind of you are having to manage all of that. And so I, sort of was trying to figure out how can I sort of use those skills into like the next job. Because my wife and I were looking at wanting to, start a family and all that stuff. And at the time I was working 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. So I did that for 4 years. Whenever we found out that we were going to have a baby, it was like, man, like, how do I be an effective father? How am I even like present if I'm sleeping in the daytime and working at night? It just got to be, I needed to, I guess, make a bit of a career shift to be able to make that happen. So I started about the time that I started looking, I got asked to do some videography and graphic design stuff for the U.S. Senate. And so I did that for a few years, kind of during the pandemic and all that. It's kind of during that phase, I got to work with some, really talented people over at Google. And they were really helping like a lot of different teams with like making remote content and using any sort of technology that you could sort of leverage during that time to like create and to be able to like make videos and stuff. And the more I worked with those guys, the more I was like, is your job's a real job? Like it seems like just an incredible thing. So it kind of like opened my world up to like the tech world, I guess. There's a startup that I knew some people at, and they asked me about the same time that I was ready to move, and they said, hey, like, would you want to come over? And so I worked at a tech startup, and we did robotics, research and development, and VR software development, kind of all in one house. And
What were you doing there? Was that product marketing?
so yeah, it was mostly product marketing and like business partnerships was kind of the other part of the gig. So it was working with all kinds of different, trying to get brands to work with us on different things, or getting grants and working with colleges to try to help boost our like what we were doing in engineering could be supported by the local colleges, and they could have students come and sort of like see what we were doing. So I really loved that part of it. It was a lot of fun, and got to do some really cool partnerships so got to work with them for a little while, and then got recruited to work at a HCM payroll company. And so I got to work with them for about 2 years. And then most recently just completed a contract with another kind of company that was in like the AI interviewing space and kind of in that talent acquisition space, and got to do some consulting with them. So all the through lines are kind of like, how does it make sense? And it's just, there was always something that I could take this skill into this job and then this skill into this job. And it sort of like builds on top of each other. And now that I've been in PMM long enough, it really feels like there's so many through lines, I think, back from my TV days, that a lot of times feeling like a product marketer feels like being a television producer, in some ways. So yeah, so I guess that's how I got to today, but really interesting career path.
Yeah, I mean, I can identify with the newsroom part. I worked at a sports television station when I first got started. I was also doing the night shift. It's very challenging, but I can only
Brutal.
imagine trying to, produce a a 1 hour show was it every night or every week, you said?
Yeah, every weekday.
Yeah. Yeah. So like just being able to orchestrate all of the people and the story and bring it into a place where you can like actually share that with the public every single night. I mean, I'm sure that lends itself to what you're doing now in a way because
Yeah.
it's about that translation of information, right?
Because I mean, being a producer, it's like just the sheer amount of notifications I used to get on my phone of just I had to always be kind of in the know on what was happening, both like national level and at the local level. And so the day that I started my job after TV, I was like, I just did so many unfollows, so many notifications that I just kind of totally shut down. It was, yeah, definitely interesting. You had to really kind of know what's going on and then be able to take that apart and then sort of tell it to your target audience and kind of break it down in a way that they understand. So there's so many things about that sort of I feel like trained me in a weird way with product marketing because it's like I had so many reps to do that because it's like you could tell pretty quick if you wrote a script and then your anchor goes and reads it, and if it does not play on air, like they sound like a robot, then like you kind of get caught like immediately, and then your anchors are a little upset because they're like, what is that, like what did I just say, like that's not like how a human talks, or that's it's too many run-on sentences, or so it's really taught me, I think, to be a much better writer through that because you just get immediate feedback. And yeah, so it's kind of been a funny experience going from that and it's being like, oh, this is the same thing. It's just sales is my anchors. It's kind of what it feels like.
That's a great analogy. The only difference is your feedback is even more immediate when you're
Yeah,
doing news. Yeah.
yeah, right. And I feel like it's like the personality types even are somewhat similar. Like a lot of times sales is bigger personalities that are really charismatic people that are good in a room, good at sort of pitching the thing that you're talking about. And so being able to work at that both of those different groups, it feels like similar experiences or personality types that you can kind of be like, okay, this feels familiar in a strange way.
Is there something you think that like really great communicators do differently when they're explaining something that's complicated?
Something I learned from an anchor that I worked with forever ago in my first gig. And his whole thing was all about like, make sure you explain it like you would to a friend. In the SaaS world, it's so, and that's a common like practice too. Like I think Emma Stratton has that. She's an author that writes a book called Make It Punchy that a lot of product marketers really like. And it kind of dissects or I guess takes away the nuance of trying to write in tech, and it's just trying to like break it down, like make it simple because there's so many of these full stack AI automation powered blah 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 whatever phrases that you kind of read in copy on web pages, or you look at the technology and you're like, I'm here as somebody who's interested and I don't know what you do. And so I felt like in the news it's kind of that whole thing where it's like the actual like target audience we had was read at about a third grade level. That was what we were supposed to write to. Not that they were third grade level smart, but that was like what the target audience, like that's where we kind of the sweet spot of how we would write. That was really like something I would always try to make just super plain when I could. Just like get to the point, get to what they need to know, how it affects them, and then move on because you've got 20 other stories you have to have, so you only have a short spot. So that feels like with product marketing, there's just so many things you have to break down to tell a story. So I think it's just breaking it down and making it simple to somebody as if they were a friend of yours because you wouldn't use all the technical jargon. That's kind of the mantra I sort of always stick to.
There's a commonality there too with the news and telling a story to a young age group or trying to hit that. It's also because you're not fully paying attention all the time. I'm making breakfast or doing something else while that story is going sort of in the background. And when you're trying to market a product to somebody, it lives in a similar space a lot of the time where why are they fully paying attention to you yet? There may not be a reason for it, right? So like being able to kind of communicate on a level that is easy enough for them to pay attention to and then go, oh, that's interesting, I'll learn more. It's similar to like if I'm listening to something on the radio, just on the news in the morning, if there's a story that sounds interesting, I'll go look it up.
Yeah. And I think it's all about like breaking through the noise and stuff because you have to know where your audience is, what are they consuming around them even. Because if they're on Instagram, like they probably aren't super jazzed about reading about B2B SaaS tech stuff. Like they're trying to, look at like funny cat videos or whatever is on their algorithm. So it's, you kind of have to almost consider that stuff with the campaigns you create and how you're talking to people, and even just having so many, there's so many pieces out there that like PMMs will kind of like point and make fun of, that it's just like it's hard to understand what the company does, or if you're not really in the weeds of like what that job does, like it might not really resonate with you because you're like, I like do the job faster, and it's like what job, or like, how is AI helping me save time with what? Like if you're the buyer, maybe not the user, sometimes you have to make sure you're speaking a little bit of a different language for that person to then buy the product, so the person can then use the product. So there's a lot of layers to it sometimes.
Do you think that like general marketing for SaaS companies like the ones you're describing, general marketing on the internet is valuable, or is there another avenue, like you say, arming sales so they can go talk to a specific person about the product?
Yeah, I've worked with a lot of like most of my groups have been sales-led orgs. So you are doing campaigns and kind of the other pieces of media, but being able to work just hand in hand with sales to like get those people in the room and kind of let them do their thing. That's kind of, I think, where some of the magic is, especially from like the enterprise level, because there needs to be, deeper conversations with people from the C-suite or whatever, because they may, the company may very well be spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on a piece of software so that way the whole company can use it. So sometimes you really need that person as like an advocate. That I think it is a lot harder to break through the noise on those enterprise level things just through like regular campaigns. So yeah, I love working with salespeople. They're always a good time and give you good feedback and stuff on that. So I like that process because I feel like it does that. But yeah, there's other methods too, but that's kind of my experience.
Just a quick pause to say thanks for listening to Creative Tangent, a podcast by The Booth. We help marketers put strategy in motion through animation and video designed to make complex ideas easier to understand and remember. That often means supporting video content with fresh creative ideas across the whole customer journey, from launching consideration to onboarding and post-purchase. If that sounds like the kind of work you need, you can find us at bythebooth.com. Okay, now back to the conversation. Have you gotten any feedback from sales that you found like particularly interesting?
Something that I do just in practice that I learned from another book. It's a book called Content Design. It's by Sarah Winters, I think is her name now. Basically, like her whole book is a case study on how she reorganized the UK.gov webpage. So it had like 120 something web pages. And so she came in as sort of a strategist to be like, okay, how do we pare this down and make this website usable? She has like a framework that she talks about in that. And it's just about like bringing people to the table. And so with sales, like I like to bring them a lot along the way with marketing materials, because if we're creating like marketing materials for sales and they don't use it or they don't think it's useful, then it's not useful. So I can look at it all day and on my screen and say like, oh, this is awesome. Like we did a great job. But if sales goes into a room to try to explain this and maybe it's in the wrong format, like they need it in more of like a physical format or like a mobile format or something like that, that feedback to me is really helpful because it actually helps make things that are usable rather than just making things. So I think having that feedback from sales is always really critical when you're making things, because you kind of get that sense of like, how usable is this? And I think you need to give them, their parameters. Like, why are you here in the room? Because I don't need you to worry about column inches and font and colors and stuff like that. But I need you to tell me like, how will this play in the room? And so I always think that kind of feedback is really valuable to me.
Yeah, I love involving as many people as we possibly can, like really early in a project. Because you sometimes find these like interesting little pieces of feedback that come from an unexpected place, and you're like, oh my God, like, yeah, when you're actually trying to sell this, that's not how you talk about it,
Yeah.
Whereas
exactly.
like all the research is maybe pointing in a different direction, or even just your own kind of learned experience is just different than the person who's practically doing it. Mm-hmm. So having that feedback is huge. I think the PMM role really sits at kind of like they're almost like an air traffic controller in a lot of ways too. It's like,
totally.
You're having to talk to very technical people about the product, and you're trying to translate that and simplify it and then give it to other members of the team to actually distribute. And you specifically come from like a creative background, which I think is quite interesting.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you like really enjoy about that relationship of kind of really working with the engineering teams and the sales teams and the creative teams?
I mean, I guess for people that don't like understand the role of product marketing, like there's kind of a Venn diagram of where product marketing sits. And there's, if you think about product marketing in the middle, there's sales, product, marketing, and then like your customer success team. And so you're kind of always working with these people. There's really not another role or many roles that are in an org that are touching that many departments and have relationships like that. So I really like that. I feel like I often kind of refer to myself as a chameleon, where like I feel like I get in rooms with different types of people and I can have different parts of my personality kind of come out, because the way you speak to a developer is going to be way different than how you speak to somebody from sales. And, your marketing creatives are going to be, creative people that they don't need to know all the nitty gritty details on something, but they need to know what they need to know so they can kind of make something like beautiful in the end. And so I think it's just, I like being able to shift between each one of those personalities, because I find in all the roles that I've worked in that I just kind of work well, I think, with lots of different people, because I always try to go into a project and show people like, hey, like I'm here to help. Like we have to work on this together. Like this is a project that we've been assigned or we're trying to do. Let's make sure like we do something that is awesome. And so I want to help you do your job so that way we can do something that's like really cool. So I love that relationship of building strong relationships and then being able to like rely on people. And I feel like the longer you're at a company, the more rapport you kind of build. And so you can sort of rely on those people over time to, I don't know, just like, even if it's not a big project, it's like, hey, can I get your eyes on this? Like, I trust you from, a sales side or from the product side. Like, does this make sense to you, what I'm doing? So I think that's a really important part about product marketing that's hard to teach. It's just, being able to manage people and get into lots of rooms that you're uncomfortable in, and often having to even like describe to them like who you are and why you're there. Because there's like, who's this person? Why am I in a Teams meeting? So you have to, sort of bring people in like that. So I really like that kind of dynamic.
I think that idea of trust is like super important. It comes up quite often. And I think trust is also about like one person or understanding like where another person's coming from, which is part of the reason actually we started this podcast in a way, because we talk to people who are in marketing, people who are in creative, and also like founders, and try and like develop a bit of a shared language there. So something I often like to ask about is like, is there anything you feel maybe creatives misunderstand about the PMM role?
Some PMMs can struggle with, that creative relationship, because I think PMM specifically on our side of it is we kind of have like, I don't know, like this like curse of knowledge kind of thing. Like it's kind of a phrase that floats around the PMM space, is that you like know too much. Like you've been into the documentation and you see how the product ticks. And so the good things and the bad things, and how it pairs with this software and all of that. And so sometimes I think it's hard to bridge that gap for people on the creative side, where you're like, okay, like maybe you're like, if you're creating an animation or something like on you guys' side of the house, you're putting in the description of like, hey, this is what we're making, this is what we're hoping to get out of it. But maybe you're giving, too much detail, where the person is kind of like, okay, like how do I work with this? Like I kind of need some direction to really hit the points to make something creative. And if you give too much, it's almost like the old like essay kind of problem when you're in like college, where it's like you can write about whatever you want, and it's like you tell me what you want me to write about, and then I can sort of like really dial in from there. So I think that's kind of part of what it's two different personalities too. Like the creative people sometimes are they see this whole like several pages of documentation, and they're like, what do I do with this? Like I'm just trying to make something else. So yeah, I think it's a little bit of like trying to think how the people you're working with, like how do they think, and like what matters to them. It's just like you're marketing to your target audience. Like you should also internally be kind of working with your target audiences to try to help them do their job the best that they can.
One of the things that I often say is like, you're not actually buying creative. What you're actually doing is selling it internally. So then it's like once we've made something, it's really about how are you communicating what you're going to do with that thing internally, and how do people know what to do with all that kind of stuff. Even when we're engaged in a conversation with a client, we have layers within our business as well, right? For that very reason of like, can we make sure that we're translating the brief properly so that our artist team like really understands what they need and need to work with. And I think that it's so important to have those good relationships and that open dialogue about like, okay, you told me this is what I think it means. Let's talk about that for a minute and make sure we're all really moving in the same direction.
Yeah. And I think there's so many aspects of that part that, like, I mean, anybody who's been in the creative world knows that if you have, a creative project that you're working on, like there's a little bit of magic at that front part where you're like, cool, like I'm inspired. I've seen something that, I kind of know the end goal of like what we're trying to hit, whether it's something that you're creatively trying to express or maybe something else that you're like, okay, like I saw this thing the other day that I kind of want to riff off of. And then if that specific idea goes through 12 rounds of revision at the end, like it's just like dust. Like this is not worth my time. There's no magic in it. There's no heart. I'm just trying to get this out the door at this point. And so I think that's the stuff that really bogs up that, working with creatives. And so having that a good relationship and open dialogue where it's like, hey, we don't need to go through 12 rounds of revisions. Like, let's just set up a 15-minute call and just like talk through it real quick. And then you'll know kind of where we are, or however the person likes to work. I've had some people that prefer teams and just like, let's just chat back and forth for a little bit rather than in the project management software. But just having all of those rounds of revisions, it's like, I don't want to do this project anymore. So you get what you get at the end, and hopefully it's good. But if it goes through too many hands, it's a harder.
There's like this whole fractional marketing role that happens, and I always think it's valuable, but it's also very challenging sometimes, I think, because you're kind of into a role and then out of a role within a short period of time with that group of people. So developing that shared language must be challenging. I know you don't describe yourself as a fractional PMM, but I know you've been in some shorter contracts and some longer contracts. So.
Yeah, I think from the shorter contract side, it is harder because like you kind of don't get the keys to the castle. So you're kind of given, whatever couple of like documents that you have, and then you're sort of working through those to try to make some magic out of it. But you really don't get that benefit of being able to find somebody from customer success that maybe you don't know yet, and just being like, hey, like I saw you in a meeting the other day. I had something I want to run past you. Like, is this what you're hearing when you're working with clients and stuff? And I feel like you kind of miss that aspect of it. And I also feel like, rapport is a long game. Like there's so much that I've learned. Like there's a web team that I got to work with at one of my jobs, and they were just, I feel like I was a little bit of a slow burn for them, where it was like, oh, who's this guy? Why are we working with him? And then the more I worked with them, the more there was like I felt like I was part of their group, where it's like, hey, like we're working on a project and I'm like leading it. This is how we can like, make it really great. Like I'm here to help you guys. I'm here to support, give you direction and strategy, and then help make decisions along the way. And so if you have something you run into, like throw it at me. Like I will be the person to help answer those questions so we can get this project done. But that takes time, to kind of show your work ethic and show your personality and allow people time to trust you. So that's stuff that I really like. And so that's why I much more prefer, being in a place for a long time and being able to, kind of know everybody. And I mean, I come from a small town, so I think that's just kind of part of me. It's like I like knew just about everybody in my school, and so I like kind of that thing with you or working with people all through different departments and stuff, and getting to really use what they do well and work together. So so I love that aspect of it more.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. I also come from a small town, so I kind of have that same feeling, even though I'm in the big city now.
Yeah.
Our version of big city. But I can identify with that. Just being able to like pick up and start talking to somebody you might not know all that well. It kind of strikes me as interesting just with the way the market's changing so much, because you've been talking a lot about collaboration and talking to other people and working with them and stuff like that. It actually kind of is, it just sort of struck me as you were telling that story, how I feel like a lot of the roles, especially in marketing, are shrinking, and you're not dealing with people. You're now going to be expected to kind of talk to AI agents. And so that sort of, I hate to call it low hanging fruit because it's not, but the things that we perceive as simpler to create are, I think, kind of starting to disappear. And then as a result of that, probably the upper management, there's less people managing going on. Mm-hmm. And there's more of this kind of mid-band, but I feel like the PMM role is starting to be required to interact with AI agents and kind of manage those. And that's like very different than what you're describing and talking to
Yeah.
people and coordinating things. Just wonder if you have a take on that.
Yeah. I think that's like with product marketing, I feel confident in a lot of ways that like AI isn't necessarily going to take like my whole job. I think there's going to be parts of it that I have to partner with AI, but there's such a like relationship bridge building aspect to the role where you just are, working with people from, other departments and trying to connect the dots that just AI can't do. But some of the pieces with like the things that take a lot of time where you're trying to do messaging or competitive intelligence, but, positioning and even just like mock-ups and stuff for like a landing page, like that stuff can all kind of be fast tracked now. So I think it'll be a matter of time to see how C-suite and, leaders really, utilize AI. Is it about doing easier work or more long form work faster? Because if that's the case, I think you'll see, a lot of companies with like similar takes and positioning and not a lot of differentiators because they are just trying to get things out the door. And I think AI can do really good stuff. Like there's a lot to be said about creating a really good input for AI and the context that it needs to create a good output. But yeah, I mean it will be the future. There's no way to get around it. It's just AI will be part of the gig. But I do think that there's something to be said for the relational side that it will just, I think, will always be there for successful companies that utilize a
Yeah.
PMM.
Yeah, there's something I think about it making individual people's tasks faster. And then the idea of kind of collaboration and institutional knowledge is not necessarily part of that conversation as much as I think it should be, even with the idea that you come in, you do a job, and you're using that software to do it, say, more efficiently or to do it a broader job, like many roles are encapsulated under one. But I think it's missing, and that makes that individual person faster. Sort of those connecting conversations and those connecting relationships that you've been discussing throughout our conversation. I think that has not been as forefront in the AI conversation as I think it maybe needs to be.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot with AI that is perceived that it's like, oh, now we can code. It's like or even just like the design. I know like Claude just released like a Claude design thing. And so for somebody like me that, has experience working in Photoshop and Figma and like all those types of programs, like I have kind of developed lots of design skills to be able to do that. And so using some of those, it's like you're just prompting away trying to get this thing, but it's like from a designer standpoint, like they at some point they all kind of start looking the same a little bit. And so there's things that I see that's like, oh, it still will take a designer's eye to be able to make this good or make this like make sense because then you're having to go back into your prompt and mess with how big is the pill that you're the button that you have that you're trying to do and that like the copy is whatever. It's like it just feels like those tools aren't quite there yet. So I hope as time goes on, I know there's so many people that are worried about AI, but I think there's just creative people are just always able to elevate it far more than what a little template can be made from an AI. Maybe they can get them there faster though, and get them started, the idea. But yeah, there's so many little details I think that AI misses in that.
I mean, I think that carries a lot of weight coming, especially from you, because you have that motion, editing, design, messaging experience and background. So I think that's probably, influences your taste and your ability to kind of judge that as a product marketer.
Yeah.
What do you think your next chapter holds for you?
Yeah, I'm really excited about kind of this next chapter. Like I have a sort of an ongoing joke with some friends of mine that we talk about there's two friends. We talk about our lives as being like seasons of TV. And so we've like broken this down over time and been like, cool, like season one was this and these things happened. Here was the cliffhanger that led into season two. And so I kind of feel like I'm going into that like next TV season where it's like right now there's a lot of uncertainty of trying to figure out like what's next, but I'm really excited to see what is next and being able to see where I land. Because the question I get asked sometimes with interviews or anything, it's like, what do you see yourself doing in 10 years? And like, for me, the answer is just like, I hope I'm doing this. Like, I hope I'm doing product marketing, like maybe to like a higher level or, whatever different title, but I just really love the function and I like, what you get to do in the role. And so if I get to do this for the next 10 years, then like, I'll feel great. Like it'll be it'll be good. So I'm excited about the next chapter to kind of see, what happens from there.
When you're looking back at your previous season, is there anything that from that you wish you understood a little bit earlier in your career?
I think there's some things that I wish I would have learned to say no a little bit more. I think that's something I'm still kind of learning, is just, as different, projects come along and getting like more and more and more on your plate. At some point, like it's like, oh, this isn't my job. This is somebody else's job or whatever. And even just sometimes in life, I think it's just like, I saw this thing so weirdly from like the Olsen twins or something, is like this thing that popped up, like a blast from the past. But they had this phrase that I saw on like Instagram, and they talked about like no is a full sentence. And I thought that was really cool. Like, it's like, oh, like that's like, you can say no, more. And I think I'm such a agreeable kind of like go-getter kind of person that a lot of times I'm like, cool, like how do I help? Like, you're throwing this project at me, or we're going to go, do this or that. I'm down, let's go. But I think that's something I'm still kind of learning is, over time, that I think it is healthy to say no to things. And that's influenced, I think, even in some of my searches, and looking for roles and stuff, is just that there's companies that I'll look at and I'll kind of, do the research, look at the outlook, and I'm like, nah, like I just don't want a job just because I want a job. Like I want to be in a place that I can really grow and be on a solid team that's, good for my mental health and all that stuff. So
that's a challenge. I know there's things I look back that I've said no to that I later wish I said yes to. And like, it always kind of comes up. So you're kind of tweaking as you go. I mean, I think that what stands out to me in our conversation is one of your biggest no moments was probably not moving to one of the coasts to work.
Yeah.
I mean, that changes the trajectory of your whole life, essentially.
I mean, the big dream for TV was to like work in like late night TV. Like that was the big dream. I had the chance forever ago. I had a friend of mine that worked as an NBC page. And so she kind of had some connections kind of in some different networks and stuff. And so she got me in touch with a guy that I think he's a producer for Colbert now. I'm not sure if he's still there or not, but I just had like a quick phone conversation with him, just kind of like life career advice. And his advice was like, if you want to work in late night TV, the first decision you have to make is like East Coast or West Coast. Like if you're going to live in, Oklahoma in the middle of America, like it's just not going to happen for you as much as you want it to. So yeah, I mean, I think the longer I've been here, the more I just have always tried to make the next best decision for me. And, the coasts haven't really offered those opportunities like what I would like. And I was never willing to like live in my car and take my wife as soon as we got married to be like, come on, baby, we're gonna make it work. It just was never really like, that wasn't the dream. And so it was, I think, taking the through line from all of that, it was like, maybe it was just all about, storytelling. That's what I liked about late night TV. And I think the best version of any of that stuff is, if you've never seen it, it's Off Camera with Sam Jones. It's a podcast. I don't even know if it's still around, but it's Sam Jones is a photographer. His whole show is just all about, talking with celebrities and famous people that he takes pictures of. It's more of a fly on the wall situation where you get to like hear these, kind of peek behind the curtain, hear these people's stories, and they're not trying to pitch a movie at the same time. I feel like that's kind of the crux of late night TV. And so, yeah, I think that's sort of the through line of all of it, is just that getting to tell stories. And so that was really, I think, part of the dream. I mean, if I got to work for a late night TV show, like, yeah, that would have been awesome. But, I feel like I've built a really happy life and have a great community here. So it's something I feel proud to be here.
That's amazing. And it sounds like you want to continue doing that. So perfect choice. Perfect. Yeah. No.
Yeah. Maybe so. Yeah.
All right. I think that wraps it up for us. Thanks so much for taking the time to have a conversation.
Yeah, this was fun. Yeah, I feel like the time totally flew by. So thanks for the invite. I really appreciate it.
And that's our tangent for today. Thanks for listening. If you're still here, you either loved it or you fell asleep with autoplay on. Either way, I'll take it. This show is produced by Cesar Barbosa with original music crafted by Sanctus Audio, mixing by Daruma Audio, and creative and episode support from Kian Nolan and Matt Martell, which is a lot of talent to keep me on track, and it only mostly works. If you enjoyed the conversation, follow the show and share it with someone who cares about marketing, craft, and story, and the messy reality of making great work. Until next time, keep following the tangent. I'm Gareth Booth, and Creative Tangent is a podcast by The Booth, the strategic animation practice.